I'm just leaving you in suspense. Just I thought that would be sort of fun. Oh, not that much suspense. Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your Master of Fun and Wonder, your Viceroy of Verisimilitude, your Chancellor of Cheerfulness, your Archbishop of Banterbury, and lest we not forget, your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett, Robcasting at you. You, imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community, once again here in the Robservatory on a very hot Friday. And why should that be? It's hot because it's the summer. It's supposed to be hot. And every year it seems to get hotter and hotter and hotter. And that's okay. You know, I scoured the internet far and wide for some kind of a great story to talk about. And then I realized I don't need to scour the internet all the time because you imagination connoisseurs have provided me with a lot of fodder, a lot of great letters to talk about. I'm a little behind, have a lot of letters. But the first thing that I did want to discuss, many of you might have already heard, but we lost a giant today. Alan Parker. Let's see if I can get this to show up a little bit better. I don't know why it's let's put that, there we go. That's a little better. Director Alan Parker, who is one of my favorites. One of my favorite directors. First time I ever saw an Alan Parker movie was Bugsy Malone. And there's Mr. Parker. He passed away today at 76. Now, if you haven't seen Alan Parker's movies, he ran the gamut. He had a predilection for making films about the arts. He made The Commitments. He made Evita. He made Fame. And I dare say Fame, really inspirational for me. Obviously, it inspired the TV series, but the movie Fame, the original Fame, I really loved that film. And the original Fame to me is one of those watershed films where it was sort of the ending of the 80s, but it announced the arrival of the commercial directors, that British invasion that Adrian Lyne was a part of, that, of course, Ridley and Tony Scott were a part of. And Fame had that great, well, verisimilitude, that gritty realism. It's set in the School of the Performing Arts in New York City. It told, it was an ensemble cast, told different storylines. Really a terrific film. Takes you through 4 years in the lives of the students at the School for Performing Arts. And that film, I've watched that film probably 100 times. I love that film. And then Alan Parker went on to direct movies like Shoot the Moon. He directed Angel Heart. He directed Mississippi Burning. He directed Pink Floyd The Wall. And I don't understand why we have yet to receive a 4K release of that film. I'm sure it has to do with the music rights issues, but it's too bad because Pink Floyd The Wall, really, really love that film. Yeah, it's kind of a long-form music video, but it also does work as a movie. And he had a great career, and everybody had an obituary for him today, but this is the Vanity Fair obituary that I thought was a great summation. So before I jump into your letters, also I would be remiss if I didn't mention that one of my very favorite movies that Alan Parker directed was Birdie. And if you're interested, Indicator, the UK's Indicator, or Powerhouse Films, put out a beautiful. I only had it on DVD, and had a beautiful. They put out a beautiful transfer. It's gorgeous this year, and that for me was one of my Grail movies to get in high def. Was Birdie, that stars Matthew Modine and Nicolas Cage. What a wonderful film. What do movies as diverse as Bugsy Malone, Birdie, Shoot the Moon, and The Road to Wellville have in common? Not much, other than their director, Alan Parker, the great British talent who passed away on Friday, according to a representative. He was 76. Parker's career began directing commercials, including notable spots with Joan Collins and Leonard Rossiter for Cinzano. His first theatrical feature was the classic, only in the 70s type of product, Bugsy Malone, in which pre-teens like Scott Baio and Jodie Foster played gangsters and moles in a 1930s-style crime musical. My name is Tallulah. What was funny about that is, if you've ever seen that movie, they have Tommy guns, but they're called splurge guns, and they fire whipped cream instead of bullets. And I love it. To retain its G rating, all the machine gun action was changed to pie fights. The film debuted in Cannes in competition and received multiple Golden Globe and BAFTA nominations. All of these, you can go look at if you've never heard of Bugsy Malone was actually one of the first, it might be the first import Blu-ray I ever bought. I bought it from Amazon UK. 2 years later, in 1978, Parker released Midnight Express, a tremendously successful, based on a true story tale of an American caught smuggling hashish out of Turkey, then ensnared in that country's brutal prison system. The film starred Brad Davis, was Oliver Stone's first substantial screenwriting credit, for which he won an Oscar, and featured an Oscar-winning electronic score by Giorgio Moroder. The film was nominated for 4 other Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director for Parker, Best Editing, and Best Supporting Actor for John Hurt. Though perhaps not as top of mind among cinephiles currently, the phrase Turkish prison was something of a meme in its day, thanks to this film. In 1980, Parker directed another sensation, the musical Fame, set at New York's High School of Performing Arts, which has since merged with the High School of Music and Art to become Fiorello H. LaGuardia High School of Music and Art and Performing Arts. It is the Your Theater Kid text, featuring classics like Hot Lunch Jam, Shake It Sadie, Serving Lady. Watch, I just got a copyright strike. I Sing the Body Electric, and the quintessential traffic-stopping title track sung by Irene Cara. Actually, Hot Lunch Jam was the traffic-stopping title track, but because it spills out into the street. No, that's true. No, it's Fame. You're right. They're right. Even though everybody comes out into the street singing Hot Lunch Jam. Fame won 2 Oscars, score and song, and was nominated for 4 more. In 1982, Parker released the heavy divorce drama Shoot the Moon with Albert Finney and Diane Keaton, and the essential dorm room picture Pink Floyd The Wall, which stretched the legendary psychedelic band's 1979 concept album into a pseudo-coherent narrative featuring an early rock video style and some moments of far-out animation. Some moments had great animation. Next came the two-hander Birdie, starring Nicolas Cage and Matthew Modine, about Vietnam veterans suffering PTSD. The controversial for its time erotic thriller Angel Heart. Erotic thriller. I wouldn't call Angel Heart an erotic thriller. I would call it a horror thriller, although it had some erotic moments. If you like Lisa Bonet, especially in the uncut version, like drenched in blood with Mickey Rourke thrusting buttocks. And of course, I do like that, so I guess you could call it an erotic thriller. From which the MPAA demanded the removal of thrusting buttocks to get an R rating, and Mississippi Burning about the murders of 3 civil rights workers in the early 60s. Mississippi Burning got Parker his second Best Directing Oscar nomination and won for his cinematographer. Gene Hackman was nominated for Best Actor, Frances McDormand for Best Supporting Actress. He began the 1990s with Come See the Paradise, starring Dennis Quaid and Tamlyn Tomita, a rare look at the American policy of Japanese internment camps during World War II. A year later, he released the bona fide sensation The Commitments, the first of author Roddy Doyle's Barrytown trilogy books brought to film. The Commitments, one of the best bar band movies ever made. It's probably, well, it's not the only one, but it's absolutely, it's the Citizen Kane of bar band movies. It's a celebration of stunted success that follows a collection of Dublin kids trying to make it as an R&B group. In casting The Commitments, Parker met with over 3,000 musicians with no acting experience. In 1994, he directed The Road to Wellville, based on T.C. Boyle's popular novel about early health fads and the origin of breakfast cereal. Then came one of the most hotly anticipated films of the 1990s, Madonna and Antonio Banderas and Andrew Lloyd Webber's Evita. The critical response at the time was mixed, though there was an Oscar win for Best Song, but as an event, it was the talk of the season. Parker followed up by adapting Frank McCourt's best-selling memoir Angela's Ashes in 1999 and the death row drama The Life of David Gale in 2003. In his obituary for The Guardian, critic Peter Bradshaw wrote that Parker believed that enjoyment was what the audience deserved, and he made superbly crafted pictures in any and every style. Matthew Modine, Andrew Lloyd Webber, and Peter Gabriel were among many in the film industry who shared thoughts on social media. Matthew Modine said, "So very sad to share the news of the passing of my dear friend, Sir Alan Parker. Being cast in his epic film Birdie transformed my life. Alan was a great artist whose films will live forever. Godspeed, Sir Alan." Bugsy Malone, Midnight Express, Fame, Mississippi Burning, and Birdie. That Matthew Modine, that guy is a class act. I tell you, he's one of the people in Hollywood I've never met, but I certainly would like to one day. Andrew Lloyd Webber said, "Very sad to hear the news of Alan Parker's death. My friend and collaborator on the Evita movie and one of the few directors to truly understand musicals on screen." Peter Gabriel goes on to say, really sad to say goodbye to Alan Parker. There's a lot of wonderful work he's left us. He also had a serious impact on my own life, as he was the first film director I think I might be able to create a film score. And Malcolm McDowell said, very sad to hear about the passing of Alan Parker. Alan was a very talented director who always delivered a good movie. I especially loved his film Bugsy Malone. May he rest in peace, Malcolm McDowell. And Larry Karaszewski said, R.I.P. Alan Parker, one of the best and most versatile directors of our time. He could do it all with style. It's interesting to see what people like. Larry obviously loved Bugsy Malone, Shoot the Moon. Ian Softly, sad to hear the news about Alan Parker, an inspirational British director, trailblazing, bold, reaching a global audience. I first met him when I photographed with a group of UK directors. After the shoot at the local pub, Alan was warm, funny, and clearly the leader of the gang. And Edgar Wright says, so sad to hear of Alan Parker's passing. His incredible run of hits as a British filmmaker gave immense inspiration to me. Fame, Midnight Express, Birdie, and Angel Heart, and his beguiling debut, Bugsy Malone, one I've parodied twice, and I want the last song to be played at my funeral. Yeah, he was definitely somebody who was an inspiration to me. I was very much a fan of his work. He shall be missed. Or 2020. I'm not a fan of 2020, I gotta say, to be honest. What can I say? Anyway, let's see what you all have to say today. So yeah. Dean Mikitich. Dean Mikitich is here. And hang on a second. Let me, I need to zoom in a little bit on this. I was doing some housekeeping on my computer. And so I'm going to change the size. So Dean Mikitich says, hi, Rob and the PGS. While watching you and Az talking about The Prisoner today, you mentioned living chess pieces. This reminded me of a film I saw in the 1980s that I have a very vague memory of. The film was about two Americans in their early 20s doing a backpacking holiday and are looking for adventure. They sneak into the USSR and get captured and sent to a Siberian gulag. Shortly after they arrive, they come across a game of chess where the prisoners are chess pieces and they're playing to the death. Both Americans get forced to play, and one of them is killed in the first match. The other one is able to survive the game and spends the next few years playing and being promoted through the chess pieces until he works his way to be the top and is now giving the orders for the chess pieces to move. Because of this brutality of living with the threat of death every day, he loses most of his humanity and even forgot that he can speak in English, as the other prisoners only speak Russian. About 2/3 into the film, the American that was killed in the first game has come to his rescue. His friend. However, the American that has been doing the daily combat, thinking that his friend is dead, is unwilling to believe he's alive and tries to kill him. However, his friend is able to convince him he is alive and then slowly helps him regain his humanity and reteaches him English. The film ends with both Americans breaking out of the gulag and just making it over the border before they can be recaptured and sent back. I can't remember the name of the film. Have you seen it and know what it is? It has been over 30 years since I've seen it. Or am I getting it mixed up with something else? I don't know. I don't know. Peace and long life, says Dean. This film does not ring a bell to me. I'm sure somebody out there knows it. I will say this. So the Aramuras, pardon me, the Ishimitsus, the Aramuras are down the street. Where I grew up on my street, 86 Southeast on Mercer Island, the Ishimitsus who lived next door to us, I used to have a recurring dream that I was trapped. They had this really cool split-level backyard, but I had this recurring dream. I probably had it 20 or 30 times when I was a kid, that they had a living chessboard in their backyard and people played to the death, and I was frequently a pawn or I was captured or something. I had this dream a lot, and I don't know why. So there you go. That's something about me that I can tell you. I just don't know what that all means. But there's something about that. There's something about being living chess pieces. I mean, obviously, The Prisoner deals with something like that as well, which we are going to get into as we move through the series. But, yeah, very strange. Let's see. Edgar Stiltner says, "Hi Rob, I uploaded a short video that I think you and your fans might enjoy. Sorry about the camera view changed during the shot. My wife was handling the camera, so I don't bring it up. They call me Fast Eddie." Well, Edgar, anybody who makes a Hustler reference is good on me. I will find that video and hopefully I'll play it tomorrow on the show. Ryan McLeod is here. "Hi, Rob. I've got a short one for you today, my friend. So while the Universal AMC theatrical window news recently is obviously concerning for the industry at large, myself and others in similar scenarios are likely welcoming this news. Due to health issues within the family, we rarely make it to the cinema. When we do, we usually reserve this for tentpole or events such as Endgame, Tenet, Dune. We treat trips to the cinema as a special occasion of sorts. I assume those in remote locations and or face similar barriers have this viewpoint and are welcoming the change to the theatrical window also. In the example of Universal this year, we could never see ourselves going to see Candyman at the cinema, for example, but we'd happily pay the £20 by waiting the 2.5 weeks. Prior to this deal, we'd likely wait for a film to make its way to standard rental, or even for it to go to streaming via Netflix or Amazon Prime, etc. So from that perspective, Universal stands to potentially make more money from this deal, from us at least. Obviously, we're in the minority here, but I think it's important to note that there is this segment of the market who are not regular theater goers. Again, I acknowledge for the cinema theater industry, this could herald the beginning of the end, but as all entertainment transitions to streaming, this seems like Thanos, inevitable." Ryan in Edinburgh, Scotland. Well, Ryan, first of all, thank you for writing in. Great letter. I think that there's a lot more of you and your family than people would care to admit. There's a lot of people that just don't go to the movies, that are avid movie watchers, but because, like you said, because there might be health concerns, they're far away from decent theaters, so they just don't go. But the idea that you pointed out, and I think it's something that we're going to find out about, is that your point that you and your family would be willing to kick in that $20 or whatever, or £20, or whatever, €20, or whatever it's going to be eventually, and that is money that the studios wouldn't be getting theatrically as you and your family waited till something comes, 3 months for streaming. But, like you pointed out, Candyman is by the way, nicely done on that poll. The Jordan Peele produced Candyman remake, or Candyman, I guess it's in continuity, so it's a Candyman sequel. Reboot, but it's a sequel. And there you go. You just said you'd throw your £20 their way as soon as the 17-day theatrical window closed. That's something important to consider. Because what happens is, if there's a lot like you, and I think there's a lot more than we even know, I think there's a lot of people, as much as I love theatrical distribution, it is depressing to know, like, I would rather see every single movie in a theater. I really would, but as I've gotten older, there are movies I've waited to buy on Blu-ray that I've wanted to see, independent movies that weren't playing in big theaters, and as much as I like going to the Laemmle Theater here, that we have locally in Pasadena, it's not the greatest theater in the world. And unless you're getting razor-sharp projection and great sound, sometimes the presentation is better if you wait. And that, I think, is a big concern. I think it's a big concern for everybody, really. And you bring up a good point. We just don't know. We don't know what the new ecosystem is going to look like. Look, I think that event pictures are always going to have a place in movie theaters. The same way that plays, theater hasn't gone away, classical symphonies haven't gone away. There's always going to be a need for that. The problem is it's always about the economics. These large-scale movies, a movie like Endgame, $350 million price tag, it needs a certain amount of screens to make it viable to open in theaters. They know a movie like Endgame is going to make $3 billion. But it's not going to make $3 billion if there's not enough theaters around for that to happen. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the economics change. I mean, I do fear that ultimately it is going to be inevitable that the movie exhibition business goes away. Look, home video, and I've said this before on the show, when I was working in home video, video space, I was 13, and when video was really starting to take off, Hollywood's like, this is going to be the end of the movie industry. I don't think even then, I didn't think it was going to be the end of the movie industry, because it was apparent to me, even as a kid, 13, 14, 15, working in video stores, what video stores were doing was turning people into movie fanatics. Because there is a large part of the population that doesn't go out to the movies for whatever reason. Families go see family films, but they might see a lot more other movies if they're more accessible to them. And I think that what streaming is going to do, even if movie theaters go away, it's not going to make people any less of movie addicts. And if there's still a window, I mean, look, I would much rather see movies in recent years, Blade Runner 2049, for instance. That was such an enveloping experience for me seeing it at the Chinese Theater on Hollywood Boulevard. It was such, the sound system, the laser projection, it was overwhelming, and it was so loud, and I loved every minute of it. And it was exactly the way I would love to see every movie that way. I mean, movies to me are larger than life. You want to see people's faces 40 feet high. And I think that's something people are always going to want to see. So, unfortunately, that experience might not survive, or it might be. The thing is, how do you keep? Well, if you go back in time, when I was growing up as a kid in Seattle, there were theaters that I loved to go to, giant theaters. The UA 150, obviously, I've talked about that, where I saw Star Wars and Empire and Jedi. There was the John Dan's Theater in Bellevue, where I saw movies like Logan's Run and Superman the Movie and Star Trek the Motion Picture. Giant, big box theaters, single-screen theaters. Northgate, South Center. Downtown, there were theaters like the Music Box, the Town, even the Soda Stick Grindhouse, the Coliseum, that still retained sort of its former glory. I mean, I saw Roller Coaster there, and Sense Around, and Flash Gordon, and that David Cronenberg marathon I've talked about when Scanners opened. So, there were those theaters went away, and multiplexes rose up, because those theaters, most of the time, unless something was on opening weekend, they were empty, because people weren't going to movies during the day, and so they were playing movies there mostly to empty crowds. That's why big box theaters went away, which is too bad. So I think there's probably a lot of people out there like you, and it's going to be interesting to see over the next 5 years how the economics are going to change. And in a way, sometimes, you wouldn't have thought that a global pandemic would destroy the movie industry as we know it, or force evolution, or force a mutation, as it were, on it. But here we are. So, good letter, though. Thanks for writing in. I appreciate it. All the way from Scotland. Omar94 says, hi, Rob. Something I dislike about the Star Wars movies is how everyone and everything is connected. Luke Skywalker is the son of Darth Vader, whose twin sister is Princess Leia, whose nephew is the son of Leia and Han and the villain of the sequel trilogy. Anakin Skywalker was the one who built C-3PO. Rey was made into a Palpatine, as well as many other connections. I really hate when that happens, because Star Wars is supposed to take place in a galaxy, but everything is interconnected. I mean, is it a galaxy or a neighborhood? Live long and prosper. Well, Omar, I'm right there with you. I think one of the weaknesses, for Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi, it made sense that who everybody was, and I could buy it, because you're dealing with a situation that you could say the Force brought all those people together. That was destiny or whatever. But as we moved on, especially in the prequel trilogy, there was a lot more of that I thought diminished the Star Wars universe when everything is connected. Jango Fett, Boba Fett. It was so cool in Empire when you first met Boba Fett. He was just another one of the bounty hunters who dared to speak up. I mean, can you imagine if the sequel trilogy was all about the IG-88? We know IG-11, so there's probably, 100 IG robots or droids? How many more are there? 1,000? What if they were only about IG droids? Who knows? I mean, that wouldn't have been good. I didn't like that. I didn't like that, like you, that everything was so connected. It also was short-sighted and not as creative as I thought it should have been. But I feel your pain. And Omar goes on to say, I was wondering if you and others think of a certain movie whenever you hear a song from that movie somewhere else. I'm not talking about a tie-in song like Titanic's My Heart Will Go On, but a song that already existed and appeared in a movie. For me, I always think of Die Hard 3 whenever I hear the song Summer in the City, when Bonwood Teller blows up. That's how it begins. You know, it's great. I love how that song begins over the shots of New York. I think everybody, Omar, I think everybody does that. I think everybody thinks about, I mean, there's music, well, Saturday Night Fever, some of that music was composed. I can't listen to, say, Staying Alive without thinking about Tony Manero strutting down the street holding paint cans. But they wrote Staying Alive for that movie. But source cues, Quentin Tarantino, certainly. All of his movies have incredible pieces of music that you can't. I think once you've seen a Quentin Tarantino film, those songs belong to Tarantino. To me, Bela Lugosi's Dead. I think of The Hunger, because obviously Bauhaus actually opens the movie and plays Bela Lugosi's Dead in that film. So I can't help. And I'll tell you something else. Even when they use classical music like Lakme that appears in The Hunger, it appears in other Tony Scott movies, and I'm like, look, it once a piece of music has been so just indelibly used in a film, I don't think another filmmaker should use it, even though they do. And I'm always like, when some filmmaker uses, like, I'll tell you, I did not like it when Zack Snyder used Ride of the Valkyries in the Vietnam segment in Watchmen. I thought that was lazy, because what he was doing was he was appropriating another director's very novel use, Coppola's novel use of that in Apocalypse Now, and he puts it in Watchmen in a Vietnam sequence. And I'm like, dude, what you're doing there is you're evoking someone else's movie, and you were distracting me as a viewer from the experience of watching your own Vietnam sequence. Kubrick, using These Boots Were Made for Walking in Full Metal Jacket, another great Vietnam film, but same thing, where you watch the Vietnamese hooker walk across the street to the strains of Nancy Sinatra. I mean, I think that's true, and of everybody. Everybody has a certain song that they remember. What is it, Moon River? Is that Breakfast at Tiffany's? Absolutely. I think that's absolutely true. That New Order remix that they used at the beginning of Blade, during the Blood Club, when the blood comes out of the sprinklers in the underground club, that New Order remix is pounding out of the channels. I mean, Blade owns that. If anybody else were to play that, I mean, come on. And also, like, Diva, the music, the piece of opera music from Diva. No one else can use that piece of music without being like, oh, that's from Diva. At least that's for me. I always am conscious of the fact that other people don't have the same identification to me, because some people haven't seen The Hunger. So they don't, when they hear Bela Lugosi's Dead, or if they heard it somewhere else, they wouldn't be thinking of The Hunger. You have to have seen the movie. So I think for everybody it's different. So everybody has different ideas of what songs belong to what movies. But I think that we all do it. I absolutely think that we all do it. Let's see. My own moderator, Robert Priso, wrote a letter that is going to be used in Whining About Movies, so I'm not going to read that now. By the way, tonight, 7 o'clock, Whining About Movies, La La Land. That's right, La La Land, everyone. So there you go. Sarah Graham is here. The starry-eyed girl says, "Good morning. I was on an up-and-coming YouTube channel called Loki's Morning of Mischief yesterday, discussing our fondness for the movie Legend and what made it and still makes it special." By the way, they are prepping. Shout Factory is doing apparently a new version of Legend on disc. I have heard Rob mention it a number of times in his live streams about how much he loves the film too. I do. I wondered if he would be able to take a look at when he has time, please. I would only get in touch about something like this if I thought it would be of interest to him. I realize and understand that he has lots of correspondence sent to him on a daily basis, so I don't expect a response anytime soon. Why not, Sarah? Why don't you expect a response anytime soon? Let me copy this, and I'm going to put it into the live chat, so everybody can, if I can get it. I've realized that since I'm now broadcasting in 1080, it's taking up a lot of bandwidth. So here you go. Here's the link to that. Also, if he'd be kind enough to give Loki a mention, it would not only make his day, but give the channel a boost too. Well, Sarah, I'm sorry. I just cannot promote other YouTube channels like Loki's Morning of Mischief. So if you've never heard of Loki's Morning of Mischief, or you've never watched Loki's Morning of Mischief, I can't promote it. I cannot promote Loki's Morning of Mischief YouTube channel. Even if you guys do a great show about Legend, if I were to promote another YouTube channel like Loki's Morning of Mischief, I mean, everybody might come to me and go, Rob, can you promote my channel the same way that you promoted Loki's Morning of Mischief YouTube channel? Because I mean, everybody might do it. So it's the strictest policy of Robservations and the Burnettwork to never, ever promote other YouTube channels like Loki's Morning of Mischief YouTube channel, which, by the way, people should just go watch and subscribe. I, however, can't promote Loki's Morning of Mischief. But I want to thank you for writing in. I will watch that episode of Loki's Morning of Mischief, especially because you're talking about Ridley Scott's Legend. I'm curious now, which cut of it did you discuss? The American release with the Tangerine Dream score, or the international release with Jerry Goldsmith's score? Which one of those versions did you talk about on the YouTube show Loki's Morning of Mischief that you should all go check out and subscribe to? But I can't advocate you watching Loki's Morning of Mischief because I haven't watched it yet, so I can't give it my full endorsement. So I'm sorry, Sarah, that I can't talk more about Loki's Morning of Mischief YouTube show, but maybe one day I will. So that's boy, I do have a lot of letters to bang through here. James Moore is here. James Moore says, I kid you not, I did not write this letter myself. James says, I just watched The Hills Run Red, and I'm speechless. What a fantastic movie, and I never would have saw it if not for your YouTube show. I just wish you'd get a kickback, but from what you said, you don't get any royalties, which sucks. One question at the end. Tyler is laughing hysterically, and I just wanted to know why, and I assumed Serena was impregnated by Babyface. Anyway, wild ride, and unfortunately, good movies don't get the recognition they deserve, and terrible movies make all the money. Life definitely isn't fair. Well, for those of you who might not know what James Moore is talking about, I produced a horror film that came out in 2009 called The Hills Run Red that finally received a Blu-ray release in June, meaning last month. And, of course, director Dave Parker and I created 6.5 hours of new special features for the disc. We did them all in quarantine. This might be the first horror film that has had a re-release on Blu-ray where all the brand new special features, by the way, all in HD, and my portion was mixed in surround sound at 5.1, was produced entirely in quarantine. So check that out. Now, it's interesting. James, since James asked, I will tell you a few stories about the end of the film. So one of the things we touch upon in the special features for The Hills Run Red is our movie was really, really extreme. And there was some really extreme sexual violence in the movie. And there was some really, there was horrible incest, and there was a really brutal rape in the film. And you've heard me say I don't like rapes. I can't watch them. But that's the way the film was scripted, and that's the movie that the studio signed off on. Well, when they saw the finished version of the movie, Diane Nelson, who's the president of Warner Premiere, the division, their direct-to-video division who produced the film, after she saw the movie, she told me, she said, Rob, the studio is never going to release this movie she was appalled by it. She was appalled, and on one hand, she said, "Well, I guess you boys really succeeded in doing what you set out to do." But she made a good point. She said, "Look, these movies, the two main protagonists are two cute guys, and let's say you're a 15-year-old girl, because the horror audience really exploded over the last 20 years. The female horror contingent rose up, and they are just as much consumers of horror films as guys are." And that was something it surprised the studios. And she said, "Look, this film's going to be in Walmart. And if the first time a 14 or 15-year-old girl rents this movie and watches it and complains to Walmart, we'll be dead in the water." And so one of the stories of the making of Hills Run Red was, and I thought in the post process that both Dave and I would be removed from being able to work on the film. And I had a conversation with her, and I said, "Look, she even said, are you gonna sort of stand on creative ceremony and tell us this is your vision?" I said, "No." I said, "Diane, this movie is all of our film, and what we want the studio to be proud of it. So we had to remove the insinuation of rape is certainly there, which is what spawns the child of the psycho killer. Babyface in the movie has an offspring. But the very interesting thing about that is the idea that offspring was created was something that we made up during production, while I think Eric Olson, the executive producer, Dave Parker, and I were having lunch, I think on the weekend, and we came up with that idea, and we're like, "Yeah, man, we'll have like a little post-credit or a credit tag where there is a new generation of the psycho killer gestating in the womb of our character," because we were thinking along those lines, and we did that. The studio signed off on it, and we did that. Now, because we don't hammer home the violation of our female character that led to that offspring, it was a little nebulous. So to answer your question, the idea of Tyler laughing hysterically, presumably, well, I guess spoiler alert, he finally gets to see. I think the idea was that Tyler finally breaks and descends into madness. And I always thought, I've always wanted to make a sequel to The Hills Run Red called The Rivers Run Black, and I have a whole idea about the new Babyface is actually a female psycho killer that has used extreme plastic surgery, and she does the work on herself, just like Babyface cut his own face off, and it's all part of our wondrous, heartwarming, family-friendly horror film. So yes, Serena was in fact impregnated by Babyface, and if you watch the film, it's still there. The insinuation is there, but there was a really, really long, very disgusting rape scene that we cut out of the movie, and I think honestly, I'm kind of, in hindsight, I'm glad we did, and that wasn't even the worst of the horrible violence that appeared in the movie. I mean, there was some really, it was bad. It was not. I mean, depending on your point of view, it was beyond the pale. And I'm very pleased with how the movie turned out, and that it got released, and we got to go to Spain. I got to take it to Seattle, to the Seattle International Film Festival for its world premiere, and I got to go to Spain, so that's good. It all worked out for everyone. Ian Samuels is here. Rob and fellow Robservationists. An interesting subgenre of horror is that of horror exotica, one that many have attempted, but many have failed to get the balance right. But one movie stands above them all, and that movie is the 1971 Belgian movie Daughters of Darkness. I love Daughters of Darkness, and it's coming out in 4K soon. Belgian director Henry Kumel was approached after the success of his first movie to make a movie that was commercial that would make money. So he decided that what makes money at the time was sex, horror, and blood. God bless him. And found a story that combined them all. Daughters of Darkness is vampire horror, and the main vampire is Elizabeth Bathory, the Blood Countess, based on the real-life Hungarian Countess. Her and her aide, Ilona, are lesbian vampires. I mean, come on. What more do you want? By the way, Daughters of Darkness is a great movie. I mean, it's a great movie as far as sex, horror, and blood movies go, but it is classic. It's classic Euro horror, and there was a great tradition of lesbianism in European horror films in the late 60s and 70s. Hammer horror had it, like the Karnstein trilogy, The Vampire Lover, Lust for a Vampire, and Twins of Evil. There was a lot of Jean Rollins vampire films like Fascination or Lust for a Vampire. So there was a lot. And Daughters of Darkness is probably the most highly regarded of them, and they really played on that. I don't know what it was at the time, what was going on necessarily. I'm sure I have books on Hammer horror that could explain to me why this particular frothy mix of entertainment was put together at that time, but it was. Now that I really have your attention, Ian says, let's add more details. The cast is interestingly international. Bathory is played by Delphine Seyrig, a star of French art house movies. Her assistant, Iona, is played by Andrea Rau, a German porn star. They arrive at an out-of-season Belgian hotel, which soon becomes home to their perverted psychological games. Their victims are a young couple, the only other customers staying in the hotel. The couple, Stefan and Valerie, are newlyweds and are played by American actor John Carlin, who would go on to find fame as Mary Beth Lacey's husband Harvey in Cagney and Lacey. Interestingly, Cagney and Lacey's boss was Lieutenant Bert Samuels, and Valerie is played by Danielle Ouimet, a Canadian beauty queen. The two hotels where they filmed were the Thermae Palace in Ostend and the Astoria in Brussels. Both palaces were built on the orders of King Leopold II after his brutal profiteering through Africa. Daughters of Darkness is possibly the greatest erotic horror of all time, but it is certainly one of the best horror movies and vampire movies. It is a movie I highly recommend to all my fellow members of this, our inclusive Post-Geek Singularity community. Yeah, I mean, Daughters of Darkness is it's a famous movie, and I don't think that any true fan of horror could be complete without watching it. And it's great. And I've owned I had it on Laserdisc, I had it on DVD, I have it on Blu-ray, and I'm looking forward to get the 4K version. It's kind of one of those things where, you have to just buy the new transfers just to support the great work that's being done by the companies that put that out. I have to say, like, I really miss sort of, that wasn't so much gothic like the Hammer horror films were, but I miss healthy eroticism in horror films. I mean, obviously, one of the great show-stopping erotic moments in any horror film is Catherine Deneuve and Susan Sarandon. Catherine Deneuve making love to Susan Sarandon, seducing her in The Hunger, and then finally biting into her and exchanging blood, which causes Susan Sarandon's transformation into a vampire, into an immortal in The Hunger. I mean, that to me is the peak of that, and boy, was it well shot. But we don't see that anymore. I think something has really been lost, and I don't know in today's culture. I don't know if the idea of, other than teens having sex, but true eroticism, the idea of what is erotic. I think there's very few movies that have been, I guess with the Pornhub and real pornography is so pervasive now, anybody can get it, that eroticism has been sort of bled out of our films. I mean, we see a little bit of it, in shows. Sexuality hasn't really gone anywhere, but true eroticism and eroticism combined, well, like you said, with sex along with death and horror and all that. It's eroticism promises life, but at the same time mixing with horror and death at the same time it makes a statement, and we just don't see that anymore. And I think something has been lost. Now, look, I understand that these lesbian vampire movies were all it was completely literally titillation, and I get that. I understand that, well, times have changed, but I think times have changed. They've gone too far in one direction. I think that real eroticism, and That's why Anna Biller's film, The Love Witch, if you guys haven't seen Anna Biller's The Love Witch, which is a recent homage to these kinds of movies, I would highly recommend that. It sort of brought that back. And I miss that. I miss those things. I don't know what that says about me, but I do. Maybe because I'm old. Hey, Rob, did you ever think, this comes from, wait, pardon me, let me just stop. Let me take a breather. I guess talking about eroticism in horror films and thinking about Daughters of Darkness has got me all in a lather, so hang on. Deep breath. Colin Norris is here. Colin Norris says, hey, Rob, do you ever think some of our favorite franchises are played out? Mind you, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Take Bond, for example. With a few exceptions, we've basically gotten remakes of older films and a pretty predictable formula, and I'm more than fine with it. I love it. Drench me in that shit. I'll watch Bond forever. But we don't really expect anything new from 007, do we? I think things like making Blofeld Doogie from Austin Powers is filmmakers trying in their own way to shake it up, and the series groaning under the pressure as a result. But do we expect new things from Trek? No. After the way TNG caught lightning in a bottle and built on TOS so wonderfully, I wonder if there's anything left to do with Star Trek. I'm very curious where you think it should go. I've been a fan for 30 years, but genuinely don't have a clue, except I want to see further into the future, like perhaps the NCC 1701H or so. A certain letter writer will like to hear you say that. But is it even possible to be anything more than a repeat with different dressing, not unlike Abrams' take on the series? If Trek is out of gas, I can live with it. After all, we have a hell of a lot of great Trek to watch. I'm just not ready to let Bond go, though. Me neither. Curious to hear your thoughts, and especially what you would do with Star Trek if given the chance. Thanks so much for your time, as always. Colin. Well, first of all, great letter. I think about this all the time, this particular subject, not just about Star Trek, but I do think that certain franchises are products of their time. And I think that's most evident when you watch remakes of horror classics, like Marcus Nispel's remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It doesn't work at all. Like, yeah, you're playing the beats, it's beautifully shot, and you've got the cannibal family, but it's missing something. And I think that there's certain commentary that's built in when filmmakers or authors are attacking certain properties or subject matter. A lot of it comes out of the zeitgeist that they exist in at the time. And one of the things about Hollywood is they're recycling all of these things, but frequently they don't bring a new spin to the remakes. That's why when you think about the great remakes, the great genre remakes, when I think about the great genre remakes, say in the horror genre, there's, for me, the big three. There's the remake of The Fly, David Cronenberg's The Fly from 1986. There's Philip Kaufman's Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1978. And there's John Carpenter's The Thing. Now, there are others. You could say that Chuck Russell's The Blob was good, which, it is. But what's interesting about Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Thing, and The Fly is they're pretty... Invasion of the Body Snatchers is close in terms of what they're doing, but The Thing and The Fly are pretty different, which makes them great remakes. They had something modern to say, and like with Invasion of the Body Snatchers, while the scenario is pretty similar, it's just moved into a city. But the idea of the 70s with self-help and you had these self-help gurus like Leonard Nimoy's character writing books about how do you expand yourself, and there was a lot going on about identity and things in that movie that make it a very worthwhile thriller. The paranoia of John Carpenter's film combined with the hell's a poppin' creature effects and violence was very different than the original. And then Cronenberg's The Fly, which people always chalked up to an AIDS allegory at the time. I don't necessarily think that was the case when he was making it, but because it was the logical extension of his body horror work, that he started all the way back to his student films, Crimes of the Future and Stereo. But then with his output, Cronenberg was just building on what he had done in Shivers, Rabid, the Brood, Scanners, and Videodrome. And I think The Fly was a logical extension of that, but they were remakes that had something to say. And I think what's really unfortunate, I think the worst thing about modern Star Trek is they have not told any stories that have anything to say about what's happening now. Now, people would say that, oh, well, these stories are all about inclusion, and the stories aren't about that, though. You know, you might have a leading gay character, and now we've got Michael Burnham, who's a black woman, a black female. But those aren't the stories they're telling. And when I think about what science fiction stories can be told, I mean, their look at AI is archaic. I mean, you might as well. Colossus, the Forbin Project, was a more interesting story about an emergent AI than anything they did on Star Trek Discovery. And I think the worst thing, the most egregious thing that we're getting from Star Trek is it's retreading, it's well-trodden ground that we've seen in 10 other different things. There's no new creativity, and there is no new stories being told in Star Trek now. It's completely treading water, and it's some of the most uncreative televised science fiction. I mean, you go watch episodes of Black Mirror. Black Mirror is taking things that are going on right now and putting them in. I mean, they're timely stories because they're set for the most part today, but they're asking questions that can be recontextualized in a science fiction context. And, you know, like every time I see something new, like devs, the idea of creating this supercomputer that can predict what happens, and the idea that's the central kernel of an idea that was in devs, that should have been a Star Trek episode. What would have been the ramifications? Like, what if a society, the Discovery, rolls up on a planet and finds a planet that had created the technology that we saw in devs? How would that impact the population? What would that mean if that technology got out? Really interesting, compelling ideas, but you need really great, clear thinkers. You need writers that haven't just written television their whole lives. You know, and that's the disappointment. That's, I think, the most disappointing thing from Michael Chabon is how limited his vision of what Star Trek could be actually turned out, or what we got. And I think what Star Trek needs is Star Trek needs a think tank. It needs like a Rand Corporation that is generating story ideas that are on the cutting edge of where we're at, whether it's post-humanism, whether it's, I mean, all of what's going on in our society, even while change is good, and I think that social evolution is always a good thing, I think that all of what's happening in society right now is so immature. It's kids yelling at each other on a playground demanding what they want. Identity politics has become really dumb, and it's really one-dimensional. And while we all agree that everybody should be equal, I'm a firm believer in equality and all of that. But let's talk about inclusion and let's talk about equality. Well, this is not something that is new. This is not any groundbreaking material. I mean, you had Martin Luther King, who had a much more interesting, intellectual, and nuanced approach to race relations than anything we're getting now. I mean, now it's a bunch of kids who've grown up in an entitled universe demanding what they want right now, and the idea of the complexities of life are missing. I want to see Star Trek grow up. Star Trek has been infantilized. It's monumentally stupid. And that's the problem with all of modern Star Trek. Now, I'm not saying you don't have to like it. I mean, you can like it if you want. But let me tell you, for anyone who's grown up reading science fiction novels, any of the canonical science fiction works, or has been following some of the great works, look at Black Mirror, a much smarter show than any Star Trek. Star Trek has become the junior high school level science fiction when it should be the Tiffany. We should have graduate studies, and not graduate studies in academia now. That again has been polarized and tribalized and all that. What we really need cutting edge science fiction writers to be writing or coming up with concepts for Star Trek. Not writers that used to write police procedurals on CBS or whatever. That's the problem with Star Trek. The problem with Star Trek is the people writing it don't know what science fiction is. They don't know what good science fiction is. They haven't been keeping up with science fiction. And by the way, you could read, there are sites on the web. Go to Wired magazine. That idea, what Peter Gallagher was saying, his character in The Player, about how you could come up with a storyline. Open up the newspaper. I mean, all you have to do is, I could take 20 books, random science fiction novels or novels I have on my shelves here, and I'm like, I'll bet you there's a kernel of an idea in every one of these science fiction novels that you could go and do a story about. Certainly Black Mirror is doing that. And I think, and we're being surrounded by great sci-fi. When you have something like The Expanse, which is literary based, which is dealing with some very heady topics, hell, even The Umbrella Academy, which debuted, second season debuted today, or The Boys. I mean, who would have thought that the shows that are three superhero shows, Doom Patrol, The Boys, and Umbrella Academy, are much smarter than the ridiculous gobbledygook that we're getting from Star Trek. The most rudimentary, ridiculous look at AI. Both Picard and Discovery went down the road of rogue AI that wasn't even as smart as Colossus the Forbin Project. As a matter of fact, hell, it wasn't even as smart as Metropolis from 1927. I mean, this is what Star Trek is delivering. And Lower Decks, blast shield, let's raise the blast shield, up and down, blast shield. Really? You have an opportunity. I think back to Rene Laloux's Fantastic Planet in 1973. There was an animated science fiction show that could have been worthy of a Star Trek episode. Human being falls into an alien civilization, the Ohms and the Drogs, becomes a revolutionary. I mean, my God. So here's what Star Trek needs. Brains. It needs smart people that understand what science fiction can do. You look around, you want to do an AI story, I've talked about it. Look at Her. Spike Jonze is Her. There's a frickin' science fiction story that was a romance. I want to see that. You think about how things are dealt with in modern science fiction, whether it's Never Let Me Go, whether it's Her, whether it's The Matrix, whether it's Children of Men, whether it's Gattaca. I mean, go to all these, look at these movies. I mean, and none of these movies are necessarily groundbreaking either. Make them smart. Now, the thing about James Bond is, James Bond has been trying to break free of its formula. But what Bond has been doing is emulating other things. We've talked about this before, like Quantum of Solace is edited like a Bourne film. And Skyfall is a riff on The Dark Knight, the diabolical agent of chaos that is Silva. And I think, again, the premise of the movies, how do you make things modern? How do you make things work today? Well, you have to think, okay, if there is a world, they've kind of gotten into it, but now we live in a world where it's more, the good guys and the bad guys are more nebulous than ever. And the good guys have turned into the bad guys. And indeed, how do we navigate those waters? The world has become very, very murky, far murkier than when Bond debuted on film in 1962. And I know there was the original Barry Nelson Casino Royale earlier on in American television. The first televised James Bond was Jimmy Bond. He was American, and Peter Lorre. It was Casino was Le Chiffre. I know. I have it right over there. But for James Bond's original debut in 1962, the world was a very different place. And so, you have to ask yourself, how do you update these franchises? And I think some franchises should be put away. I do, because all you're going to do is diminish those franchises. So maybe franchises are past their time. But here's the thing. You're always going to have, Hollywood is risk averse. So they're like, let's recycle this so we can make our money back. We know that there's already a built-in brand for these things. But you know what's really interesting? Hollywood, you never make the big money by following trends. You make the big money by setting trends. People look around and they're like, how can we duplicate the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Let's make a cinematic universe of our own. As if the cinematic universe itself is what brings you success. Well, as we all know, that isn't true. You need the great creative team making great movies that are really keyed in and understand their source material. You need that stuff. And I just don't think that, certainly Star Trek is being run since 2009, well, actually since 2007, by people that have all they've tried to do is turn Star Trek into something else. And what they should have been doing is looking into our future. Let's tell stories about where we're going to be going and how they relate back to us. And there are other shows doing it better. And the Bond franchise, they're locked into a formula. I mean, I think that they could really, maybe Bond is a father in No Time to Die, and if the rumors are true, the reports are true, well, that's interesting. I mean, that would be interesting to me if a secret agent like James Bond did finally settle down, retire from the service, and gets pulled back in, and yet he has a wife and a child. What does that do to a man like Bond, who now is being asked by the Queen to come back into the service of the realm and save the world? Well, what is having a child and being a husband and a father do to you when you do something like that? Well, that's when greatness occurs. You know, that's why a movie like Unforgiven is so great. And what I don't understand is, like, the original Star Trek, the original series would look at like, okay, Balance of Terror is a submarine movie. You know, it's the cat and mouse game on the North Atlantic. Well, that we've seen in other submarine movies like Run Silent, Run Deep. Let's do a story like that. You know, and let's do Elaine of Troyes from the 3rd season. That's Taming of the Shrew. Let's do a Taming of the Shrew story, but in Star Trek, in the context of Star Trek. That's smart. You know, and it's like, if you want to do a Star Wars movie, do a riff on Seven Samurai or Hidden Fortress. Go look at Kurosawa. The problem with the sequel trilogy, the reason the sequel trilogy doesn't work is because it's not retelling a story. First of all, you're doing a variation on what the story we've already seen, and you're just playing out the same Star Wars tropes. They're not new. What you should have done is gone, okay, like you're going to do Picard, right? If I was going to develop Picard, I would go to Kurosawa's movie Akiru, which is about getting old, and put that in a Star Trek context. You know, that's how you do something interesting. You can point and go, look, Kurosawa's Akiru, that's what we're going to do. Something like that. About aging and what is no, we're not going to go back and do substandard Skynet bullshit storyline that was done better in Measure of a Man in 45 minutes in 1988. You know, but that requires the people that are in power, one, to be smart enough to know that that's what they have to do, and two, they have to hire the people that have the ability to do that. And I think that, unfortunately, now everybody wants to play it safe, or everybody wants to keep making money. And let's just crank out as many Star Trek shows as we can. The Bond films are a little different. I mean, they're with the Daniel Craig era, they're trying to do something different. But I do think no one said it better than M to James Bond in 1995's GoldenEye. You're a sexist, misogynist dinosaur. You're the product of the Cold War. Yeah. That's why we love James Bond. If you want to turn him into some, I don't know, person of today, neuter him, he's not James Bond anymore. And maybe it's time for people to retire. Star Trek, however, as long as human society is evolving and changing, and we're having technology, and we're having all kinds of bioethics questions that rise up. I mean, unfortunately, I feel like our entire civilization is retarded. And when I say retarded, I mean the actual word. It has been retarded, not like mentally retarded. We have been retarded from progressing. And we're being held back by our own, I don't know, but it's a combination of a lot of things. And it is really unfortunate that that's where we are. Our growth has been completely stunted. And what Star Trek should be doing more than anything else is show us how we should be progressing. You know what Star Trek needs now more than ever? Not identity politics. What it needs to show us is the future that we're going to hopefully live in, and where the possibilities of human existence are. You know, somebody said it best at the end of Star Trek The Motion Picture. The human adventure is just beginning. Well, right now, we're in the house arguing. Nobody can even look, they don't even know where the door is to walk outside to go on an adventure. We're screaming and yelling at each other about our feelings, when what we should be doing is going out into the future amongst the stars, or amongst wherever it is we're going to go. But right now, we're literally stuck at home. just like Star Trek is, and it has been since 2009. Anyway, how about that? Is anybody still here? Aaron W. is here. Aaron W. says, hi, John. Well, I'll forgive you for that. Hi, I'm Rob. You know, it's very funny when you work with somebody. When I work with Mark Altman a lot, for years we were working together, people always called me Mark. And I do get a number of letters where people call me John. So don't worry, I forgive you. Some cinemas have to be open in the UK, have been open in the UK now for the last 3 weeks. And with no new content, we've been treated to some great classics to get us back to the movies. At my local Odeon cinema, AMC, this last few weeks, I've been to see Bill and Ted, Shawshank Redemption, Goodfellas, Batman 89, and Superman 87, Empire Strikes Back, to name a few. And next week, I have my tickets to see the Flash Gordon 40th anniversary showing, something I know you'd probably love to see. I would, because you're probably going to see the new 4K restoration, and I bet it looks great. While masks are not mandatory for cinemas here, there is great social distancing inside. Floor markers, capped capacity on screen admits, staggered film times for minimal queuing, empty seats between parties, an all-well super safe and organized experience. I hope you can get back to the cinema soon. Well, Aaron, I hope so too. That's great that that's happening for you. I think that's amazing. I know some of you have a lot to say. There's a lot of people in the chat, and I'll see what you guys are, in fact, saying, because I don't know. Anonymous sends in a tip and says, imagine you're about to see Tenet, and all of a sudden the screen instead plays an episode of Star Trek Discovery. Laugh out loud. Don't joke about that. Murray Reich is here. Have you ever checked out Chris Stuckman's Hilariosity reviews on terrible movies? I just recently watched his Catwoman, Ballistic, X vs. Sever, Catwoman, and Star Kid. Very entertained by his videos. I gotta tell you, I am a huge fan. I like getting Stuckmanized. I really like Chris Stuckman's reviews. I think he's got great takes on things. I like watching him. He's got a soothing delivery. I really enjoy his reviews. A keen mind. I really enjoy his reviews a lot. And I love his... I have not seen his new... I saw that he put up Star Kid. I haven't seen that, but I've seen all of his others. And he's hilarious. And I have to tell you, you got to check out his Indiana Jones reviews. He's reviewed all the Indiana Jones movies. He went back and reviewed them. And again, he's younger than me. Juxtapose our whining about movies review of Last Crusade with his review of Last Crusade, because Last Crusade is his favorite film, which I find interesting because clearly it was probably the first movie, or maybe it was, I think, that he saw in the theater. And I think that was probably a big, profound experience for him. But John Campion's favorite Star Wars movie is Return of the Jedi. And I think that's the first one he saw in the theater. And I totally get that. I mean, that can never be my favorite, but I do. He's one of my favorite movie reviewers on YouTube. So I always watch Chris Stuckman's stuff. And you should too. Kenneth Maynor sent in a super chat and says, The French Connection turns 50 next year. What about a remake? I would like to see Mads Mikkelsen as the antagonist. Who would portray Popeye Doyle? Oh, my God. That's a good question. I mean, you know what, though? The problem with Mads Mikkelsen is he's just so damn cool. I think The French Connection is a movie that is such a product of its time that I don't know if making a remake of it would actually be effective. I think if The French Connection is not a movie, it's so steeped in the 70s. The way Friedkin shot it with his documentary style, the lighting, the acting in it. I don't know. I mean, Gene Hackman inhabited Popeye Doyle. I can't imagine you'd have to get... You know what? I don't think today... Like Gene Hackman, as much as I loved looking at him, I found him to be a terrific screen presence. I don't know if today you could find the equivalent actor that had that Gene Hackman realistic quality you would. Mads Mikkelsen is already too damn handsome to be in a movie like that, I think. I don't know, man. I don't know if it's right. I don't know if it's right to remake The French Connection. But if I had to cast it, you'd have to cast. I don't know. You'd have to cast somebody that had that hangdog, bulldog quality of a Popeye Doyle. I don't know. That's a good question. I think we've given somebody an idea now. It's going to float out into the ether, and they're going to announce a French Connection remake, and look what we've done. Alexander Wilson is here and says, Hampton University, the alma mater of Academy Award winner Ruth Carter. I used to build the stages in our theater, the same one that Ruth crafted her skills in. How cool is that? I mean, that's amazing. And, of course, you hipped us all to the fact that Hampton University got a huge donation the other day, which is fantastic, which is awesome. Bunyan Snipe says, star of the TV series The Professionals, Louis Kalina, was seriously considered to replace Roger Moore in For Your Eyes Only, and even met Cubby Broccoli. I think I read these yesterday, but okay, I'll read them again. Sadly, it didn't work out by his own admission. He was too aggressive in the interview. Well, Bunyan, you're right. I did read that yesterday, but so what? You get to read them twice. I didn't know that. I didn't, Louis Kalina, I like The Professionals. I don't know if he'd be, he probably was too aggressive. Jason S. says, if people like former presidents and other government bigwigs can keep going to these giant indoor funerals that has no social distancing, then the government has no business enforcing theaters to close and banning us little people from going to the theater. Well, Jason, I would say that's correct, aside from the incredible spread of coronavirus now. I'm sure that that they took certain precautions to get in there, but we as Americans, we've done it to ourselves. If there was no COVID here, I'd be like, yeah, we did it. But there's more COVID than ever. How many people died in Florida yesterday? They've been keeping a dubious record this week in Florida, so it's tough. Willow says, the title of your video just made me think of A Fistful of Datas. Oh, that's okay, Willow. I love that you're thinking about that, but you're supposed to think about the Clint Eastwood, the beginning of the Man with the No Name trilogy, A Fistful of Dollars, which was a Fistful of Datas was a riff on A Fistful of Dollars. But I love that you said this. I wish they had done a sequel episode for A Few Datas More. Okay, I shouldn't doubt you. Where we find out what happens with Lady Data and Worf. What do you think is the best comedic episode of TNG? You know what? I have to say, I gotta say Captain's Holiday. I really like Captain's Holiday a lot. I remember watching it because Patrick Stewart is so. Are you looking for Jamaharon? It's his responses to all of that and what's going on. I really do like. I really do like Captain's Holiday. Well, I shouldn't like that episode, but that's probably my favorite comedic episode of TNG. Or I Am Not a Merry Man. Cupid. Is that Cupid? It's, yeah. But it's great. Michael Preston sends in a super chat and says, forgive my horribly dictated letter yesterday. I do not deserve to live. So kill me later. Wow, that's a nice Star Trek 3 pull. And that's, by the way, John Larroquette, who plays Maltz. I do not deserve to live. Fine, I'll kill you later. Nice. Bunyan Snipe says, my typing's getting worse. I meant Lewis Collins was up for the Bond role, not Louis Kalina. On that note, I didn't remember the actor in The Professionals anyway. Do you think that remakes of Matt Helm or Derek Flint would work? Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, for those of you who haven't watched the Matt Helm movies with Dean Martin or the Derek Flint movies with James Coburn, they were all kind of riffs on Bond, sort of. I don't know. They're in our culture right now. There's something about like there's the those things are also such products of their time. It depends how they were approached. Look, I think anything can work if you have the great creators behind that, the great writers, the great directors, the great actor to play these parts and to really understand where we're at now. How would a film like that work today? I think it could be cool. But again, you'd have to have a great creative team. I mean, look, I think that what we need, I mean, you might say that, oh, we've evolved further. I would like to see a female Derek Flint. Why not? I think that if you had, one of the things that I thought was Destroyer, Nicole Kidman's Destroyer, like, in my mind, that was talk about flipping the gender of the traditional, hard-bitten cop story. I mean, there was a story where we brought in motherhood, there was femininity, and yet that was a frickin' ball buster of a movie. And Nicole Kidman was spectacular. And I think that one of the problems with gender swapping stories is they don't allow, it's either women empowerment, again, in a very sort of a limited, fun, like you're flipping the script, but not in a very mature or intelligent way. Whereas a movie like Destroyer, wow. So what would be, and I'm not saying you make a Derek Flint movie like Destroyer, but what would be the equivalent of that? I mean, that's what I would like. That's what I would like to see. I think it'd be cool. Jordy Lyons is here. He sends in a super chat. He says, "Hey guys, just a test donation. Sending love." Jason Whitcomb sends in a tip and says, "Robert, the film about the Gulag was Rennie Harlin's film Born American." Okay. Well, there you go. I have not seen that movie, Born American. Unless was Peter Billingsley in that? Was that the Peter Billingsley movie? So that makes sense to me. So there you go. John Evanoff sends in a super chat and said, "I saw on YouTube that Keanu Reeves is possibly in talks to play Ghost Rider in the MCU. That could be dope." I'm all over that. I think Keanu Reeves playing Ghost Rider in the MCU is great. That's great. That's a great role. Attic Hatch. Wow, Attic Hatch. I've been in here a while, but I've been watching your videos and watching your progress. Mr. B, I've missed watching Robservations live, so finally taking a break from giant ape making. Midnight Express was an intense experience in the theater. Sir Parker's film somehow felt American to me. By the way, Darktown Strutters is still on Prime. All right, I got to get to it. One day I'm going to get to that. I promise. I will get to Darktown Strutters. By the way, your ape that you're making is amazing. John is here and sends in a super chat and says, "Hi, Rob," or JPRPH1. He goes on and says, "We're having weird weather back east. How about you? Do the hills run red?" I already made that joke today, but yes, the hills are, well, they're not running red yet because they're not on fire, thank God, but it is very, very hot here, and I'm not just referring to me, but I'm here all week. It is hot outside, so, but it's nice. I kind of like it. Ethan Holgate is here, one of two, sends in a tip and says, "Rob, Unhinged got released today in Ireland, where I live, so I went to see it, and I had a really fun time with the movie. It was a fun thrill ride movie overall, and Russell Crowe was brilliant as always. Two things I didn't like about the movie was I felt the ending was a bit poor. They could have tied up a few things that happened throughout the movie, and I was a bit disappointed that there wasn't much in-depth to the way Russell Crowe's character is a deranged lunatic, but that's just my opinion. I can see that, but I'm very much looking forward to seeing that because it's such a throwback to movies like Duel or Breakdown and that Jonathan Mostow film with Kurt Russell. I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait. Oh, Loki's Mornings of Mischief sends in a super chat. Now, remember, everybody, in case you forgot about the early part of the show, Loki's Mornings of Mischief is a YouTube show that has recently done a piece on Ridley Scott's Legend. Now, I can't mention Loki's Mornings of Mischief show on YouTube, which you should go check out. I can't tell you to do that, nor can I mention Loki's Mornings of Mischief because I don't usually recommend other YouTuber channels on this channel. So when you do go check out Loki's Mornings of Mischief, and you should, you didn't hear it from me. Just remember. Loki's Mornings of Mischief sends in a super chat and says, "Thank you, brother, for the shout out early. And big thank you, Starry-Eyed Girl, for bringing up my morning show. You both rock, brother." Hey, listen, Loki's Mornings of Mischief. I did not bring up your show. Nor did I tell people to go to your YouTube channel, Loki's Mornings of Mischief, to watch your show. I can't do that, because then everybody's going to send me, they're going to send me letters that say, "Rob, can you give a shout out to my YouTube show the way you gave shout outs to Loki's Mornings of Mischief?" And I'll say, "Look, man, I've never talked about Loki's Mornings of Mischief. Nor if I did, I wouldn't belabor the point as much as I might belabor the point if I really wanted to talk about Loki's Mornings of Mischief." Just saying. But I do appreciate you supporting the channel. Thank you very much, Loki's Mornings of Mischief. And go check out that YouTube channel. Mukbang is here. Sends in a super chat and says, "What are your thoughts on Watchmen garnering so many Emmy Award nominations? I think they were well earned, even if the ending was unfulfilled." Look, I have to say, against my better judgment, I was pretty knocked out ultimately by the Watchmen show. It was. Look, do I think its politics was muddled and all over the place? Yes. Did I object to the fact that they did a sequel to Watchmen, which is one of the greatest comic books stories of all time? Yes. That said, I thought it was wildly ambitious. I thought it was very handsomely made. I love the acting, and it deserves everything, all the accolades that it got, at least all the nominations that it got. And I only hope that it can lead. The ambition inherent in that show was amazing. And I hope it only bodes well for the future. Again, another great science fiction comic book series, amazing. And again, look what great science fiction can do. And I think that's important. And it's going to help other great shows get made. Let me see. Here is a letter from James Kevins. "Greetings, Rob. I wanted to drop you a line to share some really good news with you and the rest of the Post-Geek Singularity. These days, we are seeing a remarkable and regrettable tendency to dismiss any idea that differs in any way from our personal beliefs. Yes, because we've all reverted back into stupidity. Too often, facts and easily provable science is dismissed in favor of more comfortable opinions. Marvel star Chris Evans has partnered with Joe Kiani and Mark Kassan to launch a website called A Starting Point. Their goal was to connect voters with a nonpartisan, fact-based source of reliable information." Ooh, that's cool. On July 14th, Cara Warner reported the following in People magazine. "Chris Evans launches a Starting Point website to help Americans get real facts to inform their vote. The actor launched his bipartisan civic engagement site, A Starting Point, on Tuesday." That's amazing. The actor, 39, founded A Starting Point with business partners Mark Kassan and Joe Kiani in an effort to present nonpartisan, fact-based, and fact-checked discourse about the biggest political issues and policies that affect and are important to Americans. Evans says he was motivated to create the website after his own internet searches for facts behind specific political issues left him confused about which information was reliable. In his frustration, he helped launch A Starting Point to help the American public better understand the issues that matter to them. Our goal is to create a chain of connectivity between elected officials and voters to create engagement. He recently told People to try and just create a little more involvement from the public with the political arena. "We live in a country of 300 million plus people. I think roughly only 60% of the people voted in the last election," he said. "In my opinion, you're going to have a hard time creating a government that accurately reflects who we are as a nation with those types of numbers." The website is divided into 3 sections. First, there is Starting Points, which is a glossary-type section featuring 2-minute answers to common questions asked of our elected officials. Next is Daily Points, which features participating politicians talking for 1 minute about any subject they want to discuss. Wow, that's cool. And finally, there is Counterpoints, a section that features a discussion between 2 elected officials who have differing viewpoints about an issue. Current examples of those discussions are: how should states balance reopening businesses and prevent an increased spread of COVID? And should mail-in voting be mandated by the federal government? The site's co-founder, Kassan, a producer and director, explains that what sets a starting point apart from other outlets and media organizations is that they are focused on one thing only. We're different because we only do one thing. Those platforms are a can of information on a lot of subjects, and I think when people go looking for information, they have to weed through different subject matter. We don't have that problem. We're about what we're about, engaging people with their elected officials. ASP's third co-founder, Kiani, a tech entrepreneur, added that they are not looking toward a monetary gain, but to help better inform the voting public. I'm not worried about how I'm going to make money on something, but is this something that's worthy? Is it going to make real life better for people? If I can gather the right team and we think we can make a difference, we go for it, Kiani said. Fortunately, so far that's worked out. Maybe one day we'll get handsomely rewarded, maybe not. But the point is, what Chris said, we're trying to get people to get engaged to vote so that hopefully our government represents us all a little bit better. Evans told People the way that to change that is by voting, plain but not so simple. That's such a boring line to a lot of people, but doesn't mean it's not true, he said. Given everything that's going on in the world, more engagement in politics is always a good thing. I wholeheartedly agree with that. More engagement in politics is a good thing. Everybody should be more engaged in politics. It will only help government work better for us and better represent who we really are. I'm also sending along a YouTube clip from Chris Cuomo's show. Recently, a 6-year-old boy was in the news because he saved his little sister from a vicious dog attack. The little boy had to undergo some painful facial reconstructive surgery. When he found out the little boy was a big Marvel movie fan, Evans took the time to send the young man a personal video and an authentic Captain America shield. Damn, if there was an actual super soldier serum, Chris Evans would be Captain America in real life. Doing the right thing for no reason other than it's the right thing to do. This news put a smile on my face and put things back in perspective for just a minute. So how can that possibly be bad? Stay safe and well. Your brother in fandom. Peace and long life, Jim Kevins. Well, Jim, that's a great article. I did not know about this, and I think it's a great idea. I'm going to put the link that you said. I've seen this, but it's great. You know, one of the things that I like to do is to watch all kinds of people that on the internet. I like seeing cogent discourse when it's not acrimonious, where, like, believe it or not, I would love to sit down with Mitch McConnell, somebody I share no love for, but I would love to sit down with him and talk to the man for an hour and forget the way it's presented on the news, but just like sit down and talk to the man for an hour and hear where he's coming from. I mean, what I find so strange is that we have vilified, our political system is completely divided based on party, tribal lines, whatever. And we never actually hear what people believe except in sound bites or when they're in long form. I like seeing people on Meet the Press. I like listening to people that I don't necessarily always agree with or hardly ever agree with. But I really wish that we in America would take more time. I wish that there could be a Q&A session with every single politician. Like there was a government website where you could watch each person talk like this. Like I would watch Mitch McConnell do a YouTube show for an hour and listen to him talk. The guy's been in government for a long time. He's been there for a reason for a long time. Right now I might hate his guts, but I would sit down and watch Mitch McConnell talk to me for an hour, and I would want to come away after that not hating the guy. And I feel that in America, if we need to spend more time dealing with everyone, dealing with both sides of the aisle. We need to move forward. We're all Americans, and the bitter divide that we have, it makes no sense at all. And the way things are being done, tribally through party lines, it's not good. And you know what? Some of the worst people are people on my side. They will not listen to other people that don't believe what they believe. We've got to start listening to each other. If you hate somebody, I would much rather sit down and listen to somebody that I hated for 2 hours than, to be honest, listen to somebody who I liked. Because if somebody I liked for 2 hours would talk, they're just reaffirming what I already know. I would really rather listen to somebody that I don't like, and I would like to have them convince me to at least maybe meet them halfway. That's what I think we need. I think what they're doing here, as long as they keep partisan politics out of it, and it really is a place that we can, where it is nonpartisan, I hope that it works, because I think that is a great thing. And to find facts, so often facts are skewed by whatever side you're hearing them from. William La Rochelle is here. Hello, Rob and the Post-Geek Singularity. Let's play the remake game. Suppose you are tasked with casting a modern remake of The Breakfast Club. The studio says one of the characters can remain Caucasian and straight, but the bulk of the cast must be from visible minority actors. Carl the janitor, Richard the teacher, John the criminal, Claire the princess, Andrew the jock, Brian the brain, Allison the basket case. I'm not sure what I would do except set the movie in Japan and have everybody be Japanese, especially after seeing The Businessmen in The Bad Sleep, where despite the monoculture, you can distinctly see the archetypes immediately. I don't know. I guess now it would have to be Zoom detention. Well, you know what? I that would be really hard for me, because I would have to look at a list. Like, I can't, off the top of my head, this would be too difficult to try and to do that. I mean, I think, again, so many of the modern high school movies that we see are, to me, their diversity has become cliched. I mean, even like the gay characters in high school comedies and movies now are so cliche. I'd like to see more nuance and more, unless it shows on HBO. But that's why I like the Umbrella Academy so much. I mean, even though I think the Umbrella Academy does diversity really well. I really do. Because those characters, first and foremost, aren't there. This is this kid. This is this kid. This is this kid. No, show me people. Give me people that and we'll talk about who they are as. I want to see them as individuals and as people. Like, I've never, the first time I ever see, if I see a friend of mine who's black, the first thing I think about is not so-and-so's black. I don't think that when I first meet them. I'm like, hey, it's great to see you, buddy. I mean, I it's so weird that we want to reduce everybody to whatever their traits are as opposed to who they are as people. And I don't get that shit, man. I don't understand that at all. I don't think anybody thinks that way. When we have friends, we don't think about them we don't categorize them by whatever tribe they belong to in this day and age. Your friends are your friends, and then you think, like, describe your friend to me, and you're like, oh, okay, my friend is like this, and they're like this, and they're like this. But first and foremost, they're your friends. And our society now, this identitarian politics that's happening, wants to reduce everybody to like, you're a cis white male. Okay, but how am I as a person? I hate the fact that, and maybe it's because in my life I've never been reduced to a stereotype before, but now I am. I'm being reduced to now white cis males are the most hated of all stereotypical people in the world, mostly in America, but in the world. And I'm like, well, that's reductive, and while I do believe that Black lives matter, when I have my black friends in my life, I'm like, my friends' lives matter. But that's because it's individual. It's I'm talking about my circle of friends. It's so weird. I on a meta scale, we're now supposed to reduce everybody down to their groups. And in the case of Black Lives Matter, it's because, well, they're being killed. And as I've said on the show many times, Black Americans have never been truly free. And they've never had economic equality. They've never owned enough wealth in their communities. And these are all things that we must alleviate. The educational system, the family, all of that. These are the real root causes of these issues have never been dealt with. But I don't know, man. I'd have to come back to that. What do you guys think? Who would you cast? Cast a Breakfast Club remake. Put it in the comments. Send me a letter. That's your homework. That's your homework. Omar94, this is actually a good letter. Hi, Rob. I was reading up on the development and production of several movies, noticing how long some movies were in production before they were finally released. Speed Racer was in development since 92, earlier than that, because I read scripts for Speed Racer in 1991, and finally released in 28 while I was at Silver Pictures. Gemini Man was in development since 1997 and finally released in 2019. There are others, but those are just two examples. I find it interesting how long some projects get stuck in development hell. I would have figured if you tried making a project and it just couldn't come together, you would have just left it and moved on. That doesn't seem to be the case, as Hollywood studios seem to never let anything go. That also has me wondering how studios would still be aware of these projects after all these years. I mean, it seems like they have a vault or an archive like the one from the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. They kind of do, with everything that's ever been worked on. Considering how many different projects get worked on at the same time, I would have figured they would have forgotten about certain projects. But no, thanks and live long and prosper. Well, I can tell you, Omar, I mean, having worked at Warner Brothers in feature production, there are projects, Logan's Run. You know how many, I don't even know how many different directors and different scripts have been written to do a Logan's Run remake. And one day it probably will get remade. And the problem is really at the studio level, you'd think they get thousands of projects pitched to them every year, but there's only a few that really work for the studio. And when they have something like Logan's Run, it's a remake of a previously existing project, a movie. So they keep trying to develop it because everybody likes Logan's Run. They think, okay, well, that'd be interesting in this day and age to do a remake of that. So these things sit around. Speed Racer, the Wachowskis come in. They have their take. They really liked Speed Racer. I think that based on what they did with the subject matter, I mean, if you actually look at what Speed Racer was and then what the Wachowskis did, it's pretty amazing how that film turned out. I'm a huge proponent of that movie. I love that movie. But yeah, I mean, studios, remember when they are spending money developing these projects, they want to get that money back at some point. So they do. I mean, Gangs of New York, Martin Scorsese tried to make it for 20 years. So it happens. And that's why projects stick around. Good projects, when they find filmmakers that want to do them, they might not always fit in with whatever the studio regime wants at the time, but they are they're good. They're good, or the filmmakers who want to make them. Hi, Rob. This letter is a response to Willow's question about movie titles, which she brought up when her mom asked about movies like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. When it comes to movie titles, the only thing I care about is if the title makes sense when it comes to the movie's story or characters, like Back to the Future, or Who Framed Roger Rabbit, etc. I remember reading that one of the reasons Shawshank Redemption flopped at the box office was because people found the title to be very confusing. Thanks and live long and prosper. It's true. I think a title, there's a lot in a title. And Shawshank Redemption, a lot of people said that was the case. The original title of the story is Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, not and the Shawshank Redemption. I mean, I think if they called the movie Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, people would have been like, what does that mean? But the Shawshank Redemption, I don't think it said enough. What does that mean? I don't know. I don't think the movie was marketed. The key art for that movie was Tim Robbins standing with his arms outstretched from behind in the rain. What did that say? If you go back and you look at the Drew Struzan artwork that he created for the Blu-ray release, the Digibook release, that was a movie poster. That should have been the key art. But they marketed that movie horribly. They completely dropped the ball. I mean, it was based on, you didn't even know it was based on Stephen King's great novella. They didn't even say that, which was weird. So what are you going to do? Martin Lawrence, probably not the Martin Lawrence, but hey. Martin Lawrence says, maybe it is. Greetings and salutations, Rob. I would love to get your thoughts on one of my favorite series of all time, Fringe. A great cast, well acted, with a continuous plot thread. No one seems to talk about the show anymore. It was also one of the last things that the great Leonard Nimoy did before his passing. I would love to get your thoughts on this. Yours sincerely, Martin. I have to say, I know the people involved with the show, and I'm working with one of them now. But the Fringe, I thought, was a good show. I was always fascinated by it. I didn't think it ever lived up to its potential, and it's like they changed the premise of the show every season. And I liked it. Anna Torv, I liked the cast, Joshua Jackson, Leonard Nimoy, and of course, Denethor. I really, John Noble, who I interviewed for the Mainframe Comic-Con. By the way, there's a new Mainframe Comic-Con. I have to say, they're doing the third Mainframe Comic-Con, and one of the people I get to interview is Howard Chaykin. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Everyone knows how much I love Howard Chaykin's work, and I'm a huge fan of his. So I can't wait, and I'll tell you more as it's mid August, just a couple of weeks actually. I think it's the weekend after, or maybe 3 weekends from now. But yeah, I liked Fringe a lot. I just think that it's good, but it's not great because it was too all over the place. There was a show that there was a show like Lost. I mean, the problem with these shows is they come up with these great premises, and then it kind of spins off into oblivion. They get better ideas. I would love to have seen a show like Fringe plotted out from the beginning. But definitely worth watching. A good show. I do like Fringe. I think Fringe is not a great show, but a really good show. Bunyan Snipe. This is actually a really good letter. Bunyan Snipe has written a letter. Rob. Hi, Rob. As you know, I've been here for a while, but I haven't written a letter yet. As someone that for their whole life has been short, fat, hairy, and a bit funny looking, to the point where even today I get verbal abuse from random strangers, I remember a scene in Uncanny X-Men. But then again, as I remember the scene more than the particular issue, it could just easily have been from his solo title, where Logan is walking through an airport and random strangers, seemingly unaware of his mutant status, are verbally abusing him for being short, hairy, and a bit funny looking. Then came the year 2000, and I finally saw those characters on the big screen in live action, and this character, whom I felt such a kinship with, was played by, a tall, slim, not hairy, not slightly funny-looking actor who could just as easily have played James Bond, Batman, or any other lead character in popular fiction. But he was playing Wolverine. Now, what Bunyan's talking about is, in the comics, Wolverine's like 5 feet tall. And the reason he's called Wolverine is because he's 5 feet tall and short and hairy and funny-looking. So Bunyan is absolutely correct. To say I was crestfallen was an understatement, mostly because he did such a great job as Wolverine. But there's a large part of that character that is defined by his appearance, his stature, and at the very least, and knowing that Kevin Feige seems to want to go in another direction, maybe we might get a great short character actor in the role. Personally, I would choose Stephen Graham. That's not bad. Bunyan Snipe. Yeah, I mean, I have to say that I agree with you. I've always been a big fan of the character of Wolverine. How can you not be? I mean, the X-Men, I thought of the X-Men kind of like Star Trek. Like, there's a lot of people that are going to object to me saying this, but if they could do this, I know people right now are going, no! But what Hickman did with X-Men, the science fiction... now, I'm not talking about, I know people have problems with the character, but the science fiction nature of what Hickman has done with the X-Men run is extraordinary, at least in my mind. It's radical, and it's out there, and it's crazy, and a lot of people don't like it. And I understand that. But it's really smart, and it's really interesting. And I tell you something, like, the last time I was as excited about X-Men was when Grant Morrison took over. His run that introduced Cassandra Nova, and the X-Men have been treading water for so long, and they just keep telling variations on the same stories. Not this. This was some craziness. But I think you're right. I mean, my only fear would be that there's a lot of people that only know X-Men from the movies. And remember, I always talk about my 20-year span of pop culture. We're at that 20-year mark of pop culture, and with the X-Men film franchise. And I think a lot of people, I mean, now with the X-Men animated series on Disney Plus, people are going to go back and get more of an idea of what Wolverine is really like. But I think that would be radically awesome if they did that. A lot of people be like, wait, that's not Wolverine, because people love Hugh Jackman. But it could be very, very interesting. I would love to see that. And I think that your point is well taken. I mean, I completely understand where you're coming from. It's almost like if you were somebody who was disabled, physically disabled in some way, and there was a character in fiction you totally identified with. I don't know, maybe that person's Forge, or I don't know what. And then they made that person not disabled. I think that could be problematic. So, Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I think your idea is correct, though. I'd love to see that. Love to see that. Let's see. Let's go back here. There's Bunyan Snipe. Bunyan Snipe sends in a tip and says, how about introducing George Clooney as Dracula at the end of the first MCU Blade movie, leading into a Disney Plus Tomb of Dracula series, then returning as Big Bad in Blade 2? Dude, that's a great idea. George Clooney as Dracula. I don't know if he could... he's so American, but I love the idea. If not George Clooney, somebody like him. I think that's a great idea. What a great idea. But I mean, I always think of Dracula as being European, So, but that's not, I love the idea of that setup. I think it's great. John sends in a super chat and says, I just subscribed to Loki's Morning of Mischief. Listen, man, I cannot keep promoting Loki's Morning of Mischief YouTube show on this channel. As much as we might talk about Loki's Morning of Mischief show, and I think everybody watching this right now should just go right on over, but just for a second, to Loki's Morning of Mischief show and give him a follow. Subscribe. Jason Whitcomb sends in a tip and says, speaking of Rennie Harlan, what the fuck happened to his career? He was making big productions from Die Hard 2 to Cliffhanger, and now the man can't get arrested? Directors like Craig R. Baxley and Stephen Hopkins seem to have vanished. What happened to them? Well, I got to tell you, playing the Hollywood game is a pain in the ass. And sometimes people just go into TV, you get big fat money, and some people just want to go reinvent themselves and go do something else. You've made your mark, you've done all you can do, and the Hollywood game is a big pain in the ass. So a lot of people just leave. You think they won't, but they do, because, man, it sucks. But I don't know. I mean, that's very curious. I don't know where Rennie Harlan is right now. He's probably doing something film related. And I have to tell you, a guy like Rennie Harlan, you get to Hollywood, you get to make movies, you want to make movies your whole life, you get to make a Die Hard sequel, you make movies like Cliffhanger with Stallone, you make movies like Drive with Stallone, you do all this work, and at the end of the day, you're not considered Stanley Kubrick. You wanted to be like Spielberg, and you don't get the respect you deserve, or you feel like you can't break through, you make Cutthroat Island, whatever. I mean, I think Rennie Harlan, there's going to be people, look, Dieter Bastian right now is thinking, he's probably screaming out loud, screaming about how great Rennie Harlan's movies are. But, sometimes, I don't know. I don't know where he is. I'd like to find out. We should find out. Hayden Burke sends in a super chat and says, Rob, let's call it what it is. The Nice Guys is the best damn movie ever made, and Ryan Gosling is beyond brilliant in any role he's cast in. My favorite actor. Well, I really like Shane Black's movies, but is The Nice Guys better than Kiss Kiss Bang Bang? Or are they great on the same... I love Nice Guys, I do. But I didn't love it as much as I wanted to love it, to be honest. But it could be. I mean, if you like it more, then that's good. That doesn't mean that I'm right and you're wrong. Hayden goes on to say, what do you think Richard Donner's Superman 3 would have been? And furthermore, what did you think of Saul Kine's original Superman 3 pitch with Brainiac and Supergirl? I like that original pitch of Brainiac and Supergirl if that's what they really wanted to do. I think that could be great. I think if Richard Donner had made a Superman 3, his Superman 3 would have been about Superman and Lois Lane together whether they were married or they're in a relationship, and how does a relationship work when you're Superman? How do they navigate those waters? And I think that's what he would have focused on. I really do. And I think it would have been great. Whatever he would have done, it would have been great. Brendan Sheehy sends in a super chat and says, the trailer for the Comey Rule is out with Brendan Gleeson as Trump. Are you a fan of Brendan Gleeson? I love Brendan Gleeson. He's regarded as an acting legend here in Ireland. Brendan Gleeson is awesome. He's fantastic, and I love that he's playing Trump. I mean, that's such great casting. So good. So good. Hey, Kaz Graphics is here, the official cheesemonger of the Burnettwork. By the way, Kaz, Elizabeth even took a picture of it. You know what I had today? Before I went on the show, I've been making myself on sourdough these grilled cheese Beecher's cheese sandwiches. I mixed 2 different cheeses, and I put too much cheese on each piece of bread, and then I smash them together so it oozes out. So as I eat the sandwich, the Beecher's cheese coagulates and hardens on the plate, the stuff that's not in the sandwich, and I eat the sandwich, and then I get the extra jolt of cheese. Oh my God, man. Let me just tell you. Anyway, Kaz Graphics says, hello, Rob. I know how much you love Quibi, but I heard the Russo brothers are doing a docudrama based off Slugfest, the Marvel versus DC story. For those of you who don't know what Kaz is talking about, Slugfest is a book that talks about the actual Marvel-DC rivalry. According to Kevin Smith, it's really good. Too bad it'll be on Quibi. That's just great. It's more great. They look, I understand we're probably going to get much better content from Quibi now. They're going to throw money at all these creators until they finally throw in the towel and admit the idea was stupid in the first place. Or they're going to turn it into a long form. Like, why not just turn Quibi into a new streaming series with that kind of talent? So there you go. Attic Hatch says, Joe Rogan is great at humanizing characters with his long-form interviews. Absolutely. Heck, even Ted Nugent turned out to be a human person who can calmly consider nuanced, differing points of view. I agree. I love Joe Rogan. I love when he has people on. You know, everyone's always trying to cancel Joe Rogan. And he puts on all different kinds of people and does deep dives, and he's respectful to everybody. You really, that's what I think we need more of. Stubble McShave says, maybe Josh Brolin in the French Connection. Ooh, that's a really good idea. I'd buy Josh Brolin. By the way, Hot Toys announced they're making a Josh Brolin cable figure. So there you go. By the way, you missed my tip earlier. Did I, Stubble? Did I miss a tip of yours earlier? Let me go back and see. That must have been far. Stubble McShave, there it is. Oh, if Tenet, this is a good one. If Tenet makes, sorry, I apologize. If Tenet makes $650 million to $700 million, do you think the studio will consider it a win in today's circumstances, or will it be considered a failure? You know what? They can't consider it a win in today's circumstances. It's either going to be a win or a lose for them. I think that they need to make, if the movie costs $200 million, they need to make $800 million to break even. But I think they're going to find out. They're going to see. I mean, we'll see if this open. If Tenet's a great movie, it could be a huge hit, and exactly what Christopher Nolan wanted. People might go back over and over and over again. It might be like Star Wars was, where it was so good and people had to see it, that it just played for a long time. Rather than have, I mean, in this day and age, a movie like Tenet, if it becomes something a lot of people want to see, that they might get out and go to the theater just to make themselves feel normal and human again. Tenet could actually ride this wave. We shall see. I mean, I think it's a very interesting notion. I mean, maybe. Calvin Bowes sends in a tip and says, what's the one favorite film you wish you could see on the big screen but only saw it at home? Mine is 1958's Ben-Hur with someone I would show it. Wish someone would show it. I saw Ben-Hur. I saw Ben-Hur at in the Cinerama in Seattle. Saw Ben-Hur in the theater. It was godlike. That's a good question. What's the one film you wish you'd seen on a big screen but only saw at home? Mine, I think about all. I've seen so many movies that I've wanted to see. That is a good. You know what I've never seen before on the big screen? I've never seen The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly on a big screen. I mean, big. I would love to see it in 70 millimeter, not a washed out print, but I'd love to see that on the big screen. I really would. Stubble McShave is here again. When Sanderson writes characters where one is religious and one is an atheist, he uses the strongest arguments from both sides and doesn't make any one of them look stupid. It would be interesting if we could incorporate that into our discourse. It won't happen, though. Hope springs eternal, Stubble. I agree with you. I think that's the way to do it. I mean, you get together and you have conversations. Like, there are people that I like very much in my life that we don't agree politically, but I enjoy a keen debate with them. I don't understand where that has gone. That's the basis of American democracy. And, you know, I grew up watching movies where families would have debates. And being a Jew, there was a lot of times when we would come together as a family and we'd have long philosophical debates about things. So it bums me out that people can't. I find it very enriching to have a conversation with somebody. But you have to have, you know, you have to put yourself in the mindset that if somebody, it requires thought and skill to sit down with somebody and listen to what they're saying if you completely disagree with them. So I agree with you, Stubble. Mukbang asks if I'm going to binge The Umbrella Academy or met it out piece by piece. No, I'll try and probably binge it. I can't wait to start tonight. I can't wait. I love the first Umbrella Academy. I love those characters. I can't wait to see where it goes. Calvin Bose sends in a tip and says, I think after this film, instead of going forward with Bond, we should go and make films taking place in the 50s or 60s. Yeah, I think that could be cool. I mean, I loved the Man from U.N.C.L.E. movie that Guy Ritchie did with Superman, of course, and Armie Hammer. But again, you know, I think in a way, maybe it's time to put Bond. I mean, it's been 5 years since Spectre. It was almost the same length of time between GoldenEye, from License to Kill and GoldenEye. But maybe, you know, give Bond a rest. It'll depend how No Time to Die is. I think No Time to Die will have a lot to say. If it makes another $1 billion, they'll start a new Bond franchise. But if it doesn't, you know, we'll see where it goes. I hope it's very successful. I want it to be successful. Who knows? I just want to see it. It's No Time to Die, but now it is a time to die because we had more than 1,000 people die in Florida. So I want to see the movie. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a rollicking, fun show. I have a very special show tomorrow. Tomorrow, the Inglorious Treksperts podcast, which I'm on, is doing an interview with Eric Jedrinson. Many people might be asking themselves right now, who is Eric Jedrinson? Well, I'll tell you. He was a writer-producer on Band of Brothers, the HBO miniseries Band of Brothers. And in a little-known, forgotten bit of Star Trek history, Eric Jedrinson was hired after Star Trek Enterprise went off the air in 2005 to write a Star Trek feature film script. Donald DeLine and Carey McCluggage, the people that were running Paramount at the time, hired Jedrinson to write a script. And he called his script Star Trek The Beginning. But it wasn't the beginning of the Star Trek universe. It was a canonical, very, very canonical script that took place after Enterprise. And it was going to be the first of a trilogy about the Romulan War. Rick Berman was peripherally involved, and the script, I think, is terrific. It is a terrific script. It has incredible canonical fealty to Star Trek from the original series on up. The great thing about Eric Jedrinson was he didn't know anything about Star Trek. He didn't even like science fiction. So what he did was, before he wrote Star Trek The Beginning, he sat down and he watched Star Trek. And as a smart writer, he understood what Star Trek was. He didn't want to change Star Trek. He didn't want to change what was there. He wanted to add to it. The same way that Nicholas Meyer did when he was unaware of, he wasn't unaware, but he was unfamiliar with Star Trek when he worked on Star Trek II. Star Trek The Beginning has some characters you're going to want to hear about. Well, tomorrow on the Inglorious Treksperts podcast, we interview Eric Jedrinson. And tomorrow on this show, I am going to review and go through the entire Star Trek The Beginning screenplay from beginning to end, the same way I did with Duel of the Fates. It is a period of Star Trek history not many people know about. Unfortunately, what happened was, soon after the first draft of the script was delivered, Donald DeLine was replaced as head of Paramount, and the entire project was scuttled, and it never got made. It is my contention that Star Trek The Beginning and Eric Jedrinson could, conceivably, the script that Paramount already owns, that already exists, that should be kept far, far away from secret hideout Alex Kurtzman and the current stewards of the franchise. This is a canonical script that should be made. And it could be done as a 2-hour event film for CBS All Access. I don't know how, but it should be done separately. And my contention is it can still be done. And I'm going to take you through the screenplay tomorrow. And that is what Robservations episode... What's today's episode? Is tomorrow episode 479? That's what it's going to be. It's going to be a very special episode that is going to work in conjunction with the episode of Inglorious Trexperts that drops tomorrow. So I'm going to review the script, and then you can jump right on over to the Inglorious Trexperts podcast and listen to the interview with Eric Jedrinson. Or you could do the reverse. You could listen to the interview with him over there, and then you can come to the show tomorrow, and I will be on at 1 o'clock tomorrow bringing you the review, an in-depth review of Star Trek The Beginning, the screenplay by Eric Jedrinson, which would have been a series, a trilogy of theatrical films, feature films that take place just after Enterprise. And I think it's an incredible script, and I think it would have changed the fortunes of Star Trek, certainly as a viable theatrical franchise. And I think, by the way, if Paramount wasn't, if they wanted to, they already own it. So join me tomorrow for a look at Star Trek The Beginning, Eric Jedrinson's proposed first of 3 screenplays that would tell us the story of the Earth-Romulan War. It is great stuff, and I can't wait to share it with you tomorrow. So I'm now bringing an end to Robservations, whatever episode number this is. Today's episode's 479. So tomorrow, episode 480, it'll be like an M80, Star Trek 80, a big firecracker, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So join me tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Anyway, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank my moderating staff, starting with Mike Bodden and Greg Smith. I want to thank the Richard. I want to thank Joshua Levesque. I want to thank Haynock. I think you guys, I don't know who else is here. I think you guys are the ones here. I don't know who was here earlier. Anyway, and join Elizabeth tonight in a mere 3 hours, where we are going to whine about movies, and we're going to talk about La La Land. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, La La Land. So there you go. I want to thank everybody for sending in super chats and supporting the channel via tips. Thank you very much. There's always, I never mention merch, but you can go to TeePublic, or you can get my overpriced shirts here on YouTube. You can see the links. I should make them cheaper. And I should tell everyone that Mike Bodden is on the case at the Burnettwork.net website, where your letters are going to start appearing again. All new content, all the things that I've been reading for the last couple months that aren't on the website. The website is back. It's going to be better than ever, more interactive, more stuff, more of your content. Please go to the Imagination Connoisseur Gallery. Check it out. Send me letters. Send me videos. Clearly, I have one I haven't played yet. So that is at the Burnettwork.net. And so I come to an end of this particular show, and it's been great. This was a fun. I thought the show. I was dreading the show because I didn't have much to talk about. But hey, tomorrow it's all about episode 480 and Eric Jedrinson's Star Trek: The Beginning. So I'm very excited to talk about this, and I'm very excited for you to hear. I've been sitting on this because I've been waiting for the Inglorious Trexperts podcast to drop, so we would have a 1-2 approach to all of this. So fantastic. Anyway, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, well, hopefully I'll see you in 3 hours, but have a better day.